It was a sunny afternoon when I returned to my childhood home after years of living away. The house, filled with memories, felt oddly unfamiliar yet comforting. As I settled in, Grandpa, who had always been a pillar of wisdom, casually asked me, "Do you still remember how we used to walk around the garden in the evenings?" At first, I shrugged it off as one of his typical nostalgic moments, but his eyes held a strange intensity, like he was hinting at something more. His question triggered a flood of long-buried memories, making me question the very foundation of my past. As I dug deeper into the history of our family home, I uncovered secrets, hidden stories, and mysteries that no one, not even Grandpa, was ready to confront. What seemed like an innocent question was the key to a revelation that would forever change everything. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, a sound that instantly transported me back 20 years. The old Victorian house stood before me, its weathered blue paint and white trim exactly as I remembered, though perhaps a bit more faded. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to reconcile the flood of emotions washing over me. Sarah Chin, successful architect, age 35, returning home after a decade of carefully maintained distance. My phone buzzed with another work email, but for once, I ignored it. This wasn't about my career or the life I'd built in Chicago. This was about family, about roots I'd been running from since Mom's funeral 10 years ago. The front door opened before I could knock, and there stood my younger sister Emma, her face a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Sarah, you actually came," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. Behind her, the house exhaled its particular scent of old wood, Dad's cologne, and something indefinably home. "Of course I came," I replied, though we both knew it hadn't been a given. "How's Grandpa?" Emma's expression shifted, worry lines appearing around her eyes that hadn't been there during our video calls. He's having more good days than bad. Today's a good day. He's been asking about you constantly since Dad told him you were coming." We walked through the foyer, past the grandfather clock that still ticked its reliable rhythm, past the wall of family photos I couldn't bring myself to look at yet. The living room opened before us, and there in his favorite armchair sat Grandpa Chin, 87 years old but still commanding the room with his presence. His eyes, still sharp despite his age, found mine immediately. "Shaoli," he said, using my Chinese name that no one had called me in years. "You look just like your grandmother when she was young." The comparison hit me unexpectedly hard. Grandma had died when I was 15, and I'd always felt I'd inherited more from her than just her high cheekbones and stubborn streak. Dad appeared from the kitchen, carrying a tea tray with the delicate porcelain set that only came out for special occasions. "Sarah," he said simply, but his voice carried the weight of all our unspoken conversations, all the holidays I'd missed, all the excuses I'd made. At 62, Chinwei looked tired, the stress of caring for Grandpa showing in the new lines on his face and the gray that had completely taken over his once black hair. "Dad," I responded, taking the cup he offered. The jasmine tea's aroma filled my senses, another memory made tangible. We sat in a careful arrangement, the family geography of my childhood automatically reasserting itself, Grandpa in his chair, Dad on the sofa, Emma and I in the wingback chairs that flanked the fireplace. "Tell me about your buildings," Grandpa said, his English still accented but clear. "Emma shows me pictures on her phone. Very tall, very modern." I relaxed slightly, grateful for the safe topic. "I'm working on a new residential complex in Lincoln Park. Sustainable design, green roof, the whole 9 yards." But even as I spoke about solar panels and rainwater collection systems, I noticed how Grandpa's attention seemed to drift, his eyes moving to the window that overlooked the back garden. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn, highlighting the stone path that wound through Mom's old flower beds, now somewhat overgrown but still maintaining their essential shape. "The garden looks good," I said, trying to draw him back. "I see you still have the rose bushes Mom planted." Something flickered across Grandpa's face then, an expression I couldn't quite read. "Your mother loved those roses," he said softly. "She used to spend hours out there, even when she was small. Just like..." He trailed off, shaking his head as if clearing cobwebs. Dad and Emma exchanged a quick glance that I pretended not to notice. This was what Emma had warned me about on the phone, these moments where Grandpa seemed to slip between past and present, where sentences ended mid-thought and memories tangled like yarn. The conversation continued, carefully navigating around the gaps in our family's recent history, around my absence, around Mom's death, around all the things we'd gotten too good at not saying. Emma talked about her teaching job at the local elementary school, Dad mentioned the hardware store was doing well, and I contributed sanitized stories from my life in Chicago. But underneath it all, I felt the weight of unspoken questions. Why had I really stayed away so long? What was I so afraid of finding in this house? And why did Grandpa keep glancing at me with that strange, knowing look, as if he could see through the professional facade I'd spent years perfecting? As the sun began to set, painting the room in shades of gold and amber, Grandpa suddenly straightened in his chair. "Sarah," he said, and something in his tone made us all turn to him. "It's getting late. We should go for a walk before dinner. Like we used to." I felt my heart skip. We hadn't walked together in the garden since I was a child, since before Mom got sick. "It's getting dark, Grandpa," Emma said gently. "Maybe tomorrow?" But he was already reaching for his cane, his movements deliberate and determined. "No," he said firmly. "Tonight. Some things shouldn't wait." Dad stood to help him, but Grandpa waved him off, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Just Sarah," he said. "Just like old times." I found myself standing, drawn by something in his voice I couldn't refuse. Emma looked worried, Dad resigned, but neither protested. As Grandpa and I made our way to the back door, him leaning only slightly on his cane, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. For a moment, I saw not myself but an echo of my mother, and behind that, perhaps, an echo of my grandmother too. The garden door opened with its familiar creak, and the evening air wrapped around us, carrying the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. Grandpa paused on the threshold, his hand on my arm, and I noticed his fingers trembling slightly. "Shaoli," he said again, so quietly I almost missed it. "Do you still remember how we used to walk around the garden in the evenings?" The question seemed simple enough, a grandfather's nostalgia for better days. But something in his eyes, something in the way he gripped my arm, suggested otherwise. As we stepped onto the stone path, the one I'd run along countless times as a child, I felt the strangest sensation, as if I was walking not just into the garden, but into something much deeper, something that had been waiting patiently for my return. The setting sun cast our shadows long and dark ahead of us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to disturb something that had been carefully buried, something that maybe should have stayed that way. Grandpa's cane tapped against the stones in a rhythm that seemed almost like a countdown, and I wondered what exactly we were counting down to. The garden path curved ahead of us, each stone perfectly placed yet somehow different from my memories. Grandpa's grip on my arm tightened as we walked, his cane creating a steady rhythm against the weathered stones. The evening air carried more than just the scent of roses now. There was something else, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "You've been gone too long, Shaoli," Grandpa said, his voice carrying an undertone I couldn't quite identify. "The garden remembers, even when people forget." I forced a laugh, trying to lighten the strange mood that had settled over us. "Gardens don't have memories, Grandpa. Though Mom's roses certainly seem to be thriving without me." He stopped abruptly, turning to face me with those penetrating eyes. "Don't they?" he asked, and the question hung in the air between us like a challenge. We resumed walking, passing the small bench where Mom used to sit and read while I played in the dirt, making mud pies and fairy houses. The bench was weather-worn now, one slab broken, but someone had placed a small potted orchid on it recently. "Emma," Grandpa said, following my gaze. "She comes out here every Sunday. Says it helps her feel close to your mother." The guilt twisted in my stomach again, sharp and familiar. Emma had stayed, had taken care of everything and everyone while I built my career 1,500 miles away. "I should have visited more," I said, the words inadequate even as I spoke them. Grandpa made a noncommittal sound, his attention focused on something ahead of us. As we rounded the corner near the old oak tree, I noticed something odd. There was a section of the garden I didn't remember, a small clearing with what looked like recently disturbed earth. "What's this?" I asked, but Grandpa had already moved past it, his pace quickening despite his age. "Come," he said, urgency creeping into his voice. "There's something I need to show you before." He trailed off again, that maddening habit of leaving thoughts unfinished. "Before what, Grandpa?" I pressed, but he just shook his head, muttering something in Mandarin I couldn't quite catch. The path led us to the back corner of the property, where the old garden shed stood. This part of the garden had always been off limits when I was a child, declared too dangerous with its rusty tools and unstable shelving. Now, in the dying light, it looked even more forbidding. The shed door hung slightly ajar, darkness visible through the gap. "I haven't been back here in years," I said, unconsciously slowing my pace. "Dad always said it was ready to collapse." Grandpa's laugh was dry, almost bitter. "Your father says many things to keep people away from places they shouldn't go. But some doors need to be opened, especially when time is running short." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old brass key, its surface worn smooth by years of handling. My breath caught. I recognized that key. It used to hang on the hook by the kitchen door when I was young, always there but never used, at least not that I saw. "Grandpa, what is this about?" I asked, but he was already pushing open the shed door. It swung inward with surprising ease, no creaking or resistance, as if it had been regularly maintained despite its decrepit appearance. The smell that emerged was not the musty decay I expected, but something cleaner, almost antiseptic. "Your grandmother," Grandpa began, stepping into the darkness, "was a very special woman. She had gifts, knowledge that came from her mother, and her mother's mother before that." I followed him inside, my phone's flashlight revealing not the cluttered storage space I expected, but a surprisingly organized interior. Shelves lined the walls, filled with glass jars, dried herbs, and what looked like old journals. In the center sat a desk, its surface covered with papers and photographs. "What is this place?" I whispered, though I wasn't sure why I felt the need to lower my voice. Grandpa moved to the desk with surprising confidence in the dim light, his fingers finding what he sought with practiced ease. "This was hers," he said, picking up a leather-bound journal. "She made me promise to keep it safe, to wait for the right time. I think that time is now." He pressed the journal into my hands, and I felt the weight of it, both physical and metaphorical. The leather was soft, well-preserved, and embossed with characters I recognized as my grandmother's name. "I don't understand," I said, looking from the journal to Grandpa's face, which seemed to have aged years in the past few minutes. "What does this have to do with your question about our evening walks?" Grandpa sank into the desk chair, suddenly looking every one of his 87 years. "Open it," he said simply. Page 47. With trembling fingers, I found the page. The writing was in Mandarin, my grandmother's precise characters filling the page. My Chinese reading skills were rusty, but I could make out enough. It was dated 35 years ago, shortly after my birth. The entry began normally enough, observations about the weather, notes about the garden, but then the tone shifted. She wrote about dreams, about seeing things that hadn't happened yet, about a burden passed down through generations of women in her family. And then I saw my name, my Chinese name, written with such care it seemed to pulse on the page. "She knew," Grandpa said quietly. "She knew you would be the one to carry it forward. The gift skips sometimes, passes by one to find another. Your mother." His voice broke slightly. "Your mother didn't have it. But you, Shaoli, you showed signs even as a baby. The way you would stare at empty corners, reach for things that weren't there, cry before the phone rang with bad news." My hands were shaking now, the journal trembling. "That's ridiculous," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, memories began surfacing. Things I'd dismissed, rationalized, pushed away. The dreams that came true. The moments of knowing things I shouldn't know. The reason I'd really left home, not just grief over Mom, but fear of something I couldn't name. "Why now?" I asked, closing the journal, unable to read more. Why tell me this now? Grandpa stood, moving to one of the shelves. He pulled down a small wooden box, its surface inlaid with mother of pearl. Because I'm forgetting, he said simply. The doctors call it dementia, but I know better. The memories that are leaving aren't random. Someone, something, is taking them. And the only person who might understand why is you. He opened the box, revealing a collection of what looked like ordinary objects, a hairpin, a smooth stone, a dried flower, a small mirror. But even from where I stood, I could feel something emanating from them, an energy that made my skin prickle. These were your grandmother's tools, he explained. She used them to see, to understand, to protect. She taught me what she could, but I was never gifted the way she was. The way you are. I backed toward the door, overwhelmed. This is crazy. You're talking about, what? Psychic powers? Magic? Grandpa, you need help. Medical help. The look he gave me then was so lucid, so penetrating, that it stopped me cold. Yesterday, I couldn't remember Emma's middle name, he said. Last week, I forgot the word for kitchen in Mandarin. But this? This I remember with perfect clarity, because she made sure I would. Because someone needed to tell you, to warn you, before it's too late. Too late for what? I demanded, frustration and fear warring in my chest. He moved back to the desk, pulling out a newspaper clipping. The headline read "Local Woman Dies in Garden Accident," and the date was from 3 months ago. I didn't recognize the woman's name, but something about her face in the grainy photo seemed familiar. She was like us, Grandpa said. Like your grandmother. Like you. And she's the third one this year. He pulled out more clippings, laying them out like evidence. Different cities, different circumstances, but all women, all between 30 and 40, all dead in ways that didn't quite make sense. Someone is hunting us, he said, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. Someone who knows about the gift, who wants to either steal it or destroy it. Your grandmother saw this coming, saw it in her dreams decades ago. That's why she prepared this place, why she made me promise to protect it until you were ready. I sank onto a dusty crate, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Ready for what? I'm an architect, Grandpa. I design buildings. I don't. I can't. But even as I protested, I felt something stirring inside me, something that had been dormant for years. The garden suddenly felt alive around us, pressing in with an almost sentient awareness. The evening walks, I said suddenly, the connection clicking into place. You used to tell me stories during our walks. About the garden spirits, about the old ways, about... I paused, the memory crystallizing. About the women who could see between worlds. Grandpa nodded, relief flickering across his face. You do remember. I wasn't sure how much had stayed with you, how much you'd let yourself keep. He moved back to the door, peering out into the growing darkness. We should go back. Your father and Emma will worry. But now you know where to find this place, where to find the answers when you're ready to look for them. As we left the shed, I clutched the journal to my chest, my mind reeling. The garden path back to the house seemed longer than before, shadows dancing at the edge of my vision in ways that no longer felt entirely natural. Grandpa, I said as we neared the house, its windows glowing warmly against the night. What did Grandma see? In her dreams about me? He paused at the back door, his hand on the knob. She saw you standing at a crossroads, he said quietly. One path led to safety, to the life you've built far from here. The other. He met my eyes, and I saw fear there, real fear. The other led to understanding, to power, to purpose. But also to danger. Great danger. He opened the door, the sounds of Emma setting the table and Dad watching the news drifting out. She couldn't see which path you'd choose. That's the one thing the gift can never show us, our own choices. As I stepped back into the warmth and normalcy of my childhood home, the journal hidden under my jacket, I felt like I was living in two worlds at once. In one, I was Sarah Chin, successful architect, returning home for a family visit. In the other, I was Xiaoli, inheritor of something ancient and dangerous, standing at the edge of a mystery that spanned generations. The question was, which world was real? Or were they both? As we sat down to dinner, Emma chattering about her day and Dad asking about my flight, I caught Grandpa watching me. He raised his teacup slightly, a silent toast to secrets shared, and I realized that my life had just become infinitely more complicated. The innocent question about evening walks had opened a door I wasn't sure I could close again, even if I wanted to. And the terrifying truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted to. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to the ceiling 25 years ago, their light long faded but shapes still visible in the darkness. The journal sat on my nightstand like a living thing, and I swore I could feel it pulling at me, demanding to be read. At 3 a.m., I gave up and switched on the bedside lamp, its soft light revealing the familiar posters and trophies of my youth, now seeming like artifacts from someone else's life. The house was silent except for the grandfather clock's rhythmic ticking and Dad's soft snoring from down the hall. I picked up the journal, running my fingers over the worn leather before opening it to a random page. My grandmother's handwriting flowed across the page in elegant characters, dated 15 years before my birth. She wrote about a woman who had come to her seeking help, plagued by visions of her own death. Grandma had tried to intervene, to change what was seen, but the entry ended with a stark observation: some fates are written in stone, others in water. The gift shows us both, but doesn't always reveal which is which. I flipped forward, finding more entries about dreams, premonitions, and visitors who sought her abilities. Some stories ended well, others tragically, but through them all ran a common thread: the burden of knowing, the weight of seeing what others couldn't. A soft knock at my door made me jump. "Sarah?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you awake?" I quickly hid the journal under my pillow. "Come in," I called softly. She entered wearing her old college sweatshirt, looking younger than her 32 years. She perched on the edge of my bed, just like she used to when we were kids and thunderstorms scared her. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Grandpa's question really rattled you, didn't it?" I studied my sister's face, wondering how much she knew, how much she'd noticed over the years. "It was just strange," I said carefully. The way he asked it, like it meant something more. Emma pulled her knees up to her chest, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. "He's been different lately," she admitted. "Not just the memory stuff. Sometimes he says things, knows things he shouldn't. Last week, he told me not to take Route 9 to work. I thought he was confused, took my usual way instead. There was a 10-car pile-up right where I would have been." She paused, searching my face. "Sarah, what really happened during your walk? You both came back looking like you'd seen a ghost." The irony of her words wasn't lost on me, but I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. "Just nostalgia," I lied. "You know how he gets." But Emma wasn't buying it. She'd always been able to read me too well. "There's something else," she said, lowering her voice even more. "I've been having dreams. Weird, vivid dreams. About Mom, about the garden, about you." My pulse quickened. "What kind of dreams?" Emma shifted uncomfortably. "You're standing in the garden, but it's not our garden. It's older, wilder. There are women with you, lots of them, in old-fashioned clothes. And there's something chasing you, something dark. I wake up terrified, and the fear stays with me all day." She laughed shakily. "Probably just stress, right? Taking care of Grandpa, missing you, all of it manifesting in weird ways." But I heard the question in her voice, the need for reassurance I couldn't give. Before I could respond, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, shuffling steps that could only be Grandpa. Emma and I exchanged glances before quietly moving to the door. Peering out, we saw him making his way downstairs, fully dressed despite the hour. "Should we follow him?" Emma whispered. I nodded, and we crept after him, keeping our distance. He moved with surprising purpose for someone supposedly suffering from dementia, navigating the dark house without hesitation. He went to the kitchen, but instead of turning on lights, he stood at the window, staring out at the garden. "They're getting closer," he said, and Emma grabbed my arm in shock. We hadn't made a sound, but somehow he knew we were there. "I can feel them circling, testing the boundaries," she said. "The protections are weakening." He turned to face us, and in the moonlight, his eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. "Both of you need to know the truth now. Emma, you have it too, just differently than your sister. That's why the dreams are getting stronger." Emma's grip on my arm tightened painfully. "What are you talking about, Grandpa? What truth?" He moved to the kitchen table, gesturing for us to sit. Even in the darkness, his movements were sure, controlled. "Your grandmother came from a long line of women with gifts," he began, his voice steady and clear, no trace of confusion. "In China, they were called different names: witch, healer, seer. Here, she tried to hide it, to live a normal life. But the gift doesn't care about our desires for normalcy." He looked at me. "You inherited her sight, her ability to see beyond the veil. And you," he turned to Emma, "inherited her empathy, her ability to feel and influence emotions. Together, you're stronger than she ever was alone. That's why they're coming." "Who's coming?" I demanded, fear and frustration making my voice sharp. "You keep talking about them like we should know what you mean." Grandpa stood, moving to a kitchen drawer I'd never seen opened. From it, he pulled out a manila folder thick with papers. "The Order of the Void," he said, placing the folder on the table. "They've existed for centuries, hunting those with gifts, either recruiting them or eliminating them. Your grandmother spent years documenting their activities, tracking their movements." I opened the folder with trembling hands, finding newspaper clippings, photographs, genealogical charts. Names and dates going back generations, all connected by thin red lines my grandmother had drawn. "This is insane," Emma breathed, but she was leaning in, studying the documents with the same intensity she used for her lesson plans. "These deaths, they're all over the world. How could one organization?" She trailed off, her fingers stopping on one particular photo. It was our mother, young and smiling, standing next to Grandma in the garden. But in the background, barely visible, was a figure in dark clothing, face obscured. "Mom knew," I said, the realization hitting like a physical blow. "That's why she made me promise to leave, to build a life far from here. She was protecting me." Grandpa nodded sadly. "She discovered the truth shortly before she got sick. The cancer, we were never sure if it was natural or induced. The Order has ways of making deaths look accidental, illness seem random." The words hung in the air like poison. Emma made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "You're saying Mom was murdered?" The raw pain in her voice made me reach for her hand. "We don't know," Grandpa said gently. "But she believed you both were in danger. That's why she made arrangements, set things in motion to protect you even after she was gone." I stood abruptly, anger surging through me. "Then why didn't anyone tell us? Why all the secrets and lies?" My voice was rising, but I didn't care. "We had a right to know." The lights in the kitchen suddenly flickered on without anyone touching the switch. We all froze. "That's why," Grandpa said quietly. "Strong emotions trigger the gift. The more you know, the more you feel, the stronger it becomes. And the stronger it becomes, the easier you are to find." As if to prove his point, the lights flickered again, and I felt something inside me responding, reaching out. I could sense Emma's fear, Dad's dreams upstairs, even the neighbor's cat prowling outside. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Make it stop, Emma whimpered, pressing her palms to her temples. I realized she was feeling it too, the emotions of everyone around us flooding in like a tide. Grandpa moved quickly, placing his hands on both our shoulders. Breathe, he instructed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Imagine walls around your mind, boundaries between you and the world. It took several minutes, but gradually the sensations faded to a manageable level. Emma was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. How did Mom live with this? She asked. How did Grandma? With difficulty, Grandpa admitted. But also with purpose. They used their gifts to help people, to protect the innocent, to maintain the balance between worlds. He moved back to the window, studying the garden with renewed intensity. But now that balance is threatened. The order has grown bolder, more desperate. Something has changed in their leadership, their methods. The old rules no longer apply. As if in response to his words, a shadow moved across the garden, too deliberate to be wind-blown branches. Emma saw it too, her sharp intake of breath confirming my sight. They're here, Grandpa said, his voice grim. Sooner than I expected. They must have sensed your awakening. He moved with surprising speed for his age, pulling items from various drawers, salt, dried herbs, a silver knife I'd never seen before. Wake your father. Tell him code white. He'll know what to do. Emma ran for the stairs while I stood frozen, watching Grandpa create a circle of salt around the kitchen table. What are you doing? I asked, though part of me already knew. Protection, he said simply. Your grandmother taught me well. This will hold them for a while, but not forever. Dad appeared in the doorway, fully dressed and carrying a shotgun I didn't know we owned. His face was grim but unsurprised. How many? He asked Grandpa. At least 3, Grandpa replied. Maybe more. Dad nodded, checking the gun with practiced movements. Girls, get in the circle. Now. His tone brooked no argument. As we huddled inside the salt circle, I felt a rage building inside me. You all knew, I accused. All these years, you all knew and said nothing. Dad met my eyes, and I saw years of pain there. We knew enough to be afraid, he said. Your mother made me promise to keep you safe, to let you live normal lives. I thought distance would be enough. I was wrong. The kitchen window exploded inward in a shower of glass. A figure in black rolled through, landing in a crouch. Before anyone could react, Dad fired, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. The figure dodged with inhuman speed, but the salt line flared with white light when they tried to cross it, forcing them back. Sanctuary protocols are in effect, Grandpa called out in a voice that seemed to carry power. This house is protected by old laws. You have no right to enter. The figure straightened, pulling back their hood to reveal a woman with silver hair and cold, dead eyes. Old laws for an old man, she said, her voice like ice. The world is changing, Chinwei. Your granddaughter's power belongs to a new age, whether they surrender it willingly or we take it from their corpses. Emma grabbed my hand, and I felt her terror mixing with my own. But underneath the fear was something else, a growing fury that someone would threaten our family, our home. The lights began to flicker again, but this time it felt deliberate, controlled. You want our power? I heard myself say, standing despite Dad's attempt to hold me back. Then come and take it. The woman smiled, a predator recognizing prey that might bite back. Ah, the architect speaks. Tell me, Sarachin, do you even know what you're capable of? What your grandmother could do when properly motivated? She pulled out a small device, pressing a button. Suddenly, the air filled with whispers, voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize but somehow understood. They spoke of loss, of pain, of secrets that should stay buried. Emma cried out, clutching her head, and I felt the barriers Grandpa had taught us starting to crack. Fight it, Grandpa commanded, but his voice seemed distant. The whispers were showing me things, Mom in her final days, knowing what was coming. Grandma facing down figures like this woman, sometimes winning, sometimes losing. Generations of women in my family line, each carrying the gift, each paying the price. "Stop it!" I screamed, and the windows throughout the house shattered simultaneously. The woman stepped back, surprise flickering across her face. "Impressive," she admitted. "Raw, untrained, but impressive. You might actually be worth recruiting rather than eliminating." "We will never join you," Emma said, finding her voice. Despite her fear, she stood tall, our hands still clasped. "Our mother died rather than let you have us. We won't dishonor her memory." The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your mother died because she was weak, because she thought she could protect you with distance and ignorance. Look how well that worked." She gestured to the ruined kitchen, to our huddled family. "You can't run from what you are. You can't hide from us forever. Join us willingly, and we'll teach you to master your gifts. Refuse, and well." She didn't need to finish the threat. "Get out," Dad said, pumping another round into the shotgun. "You've delivered your message. The girls have heard it. Now leave my house before I forget the old laws too." The woman studied us all for a long moment, her gaze lingering on me. 3 days, she said finally. "You have 3 days to decide. After that, we take what we want." She moved back to the window, pausing at the threshold. "Oh, and Sarah? That building you're so proud of in Chicago? Such a shame about the foundation problems. You might want to check on that." Then she was gone, melting into the pre-dawn darkness like smoke. We stood in the ruined kitchen, glass crunching under our feet, the salt circles still glowing faintly. Emma was shaking, Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him, and Grandpa seemed to be struggling to stay upright. "What do we do now?" Emma asked, voicing what we were all thinking. Grandpa straightened with effort, looking at each of us in turn. "Now," he said, "we prepare for war. 3 days isn't much time, but your grandmother left us more than just warnings. She left us weapons." He looked at me, and I saw pride mixed with fear in his eyes. "The real question is, are you ready to learn what you truly are?" I looked around at my family, at the destruction one member of the order had caused so easily, at the life I'd built crumbling around me. The journal upstairs called to me, promising answers but also responsibility I wasn't sure I wanted. But Emma's hand in mine was steady now, Dad stood ready to defend us, and Grandpa offered knowledge that might save us all. "I'm ready," I said, and felt the truth of it resonating through me. The innocent question about evening walks had become something far darker, far more dangerous. But it had also shown me something I'd been running from my entire adult life. I wasn't alone, and I never had been. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The Order of the Void had made a crucial mistake. They'd threatened my family, and in doing so, they'd awakened something that should have been left sleeping. 3 days. We had 3 days to become what we were meant to be, or die trying. The morning sun streaming through the broken windows felt like a mockery of the night's events. We'd spent hours cleaning glass, reinforcing the salt barriers, and trying to process what had happened. Dad boarded up the windows while Emma and I helped Grandpa organize the materials he'd pulled from hidden compartments throughout the house, compartments none of us knew existed. My architectural training told me these hiding spots were built into the home's original structure, planned from the beginning. Our house had always been more than it seemed. Your grandmother was meticulous, Grandpa explained, laying out various items on the dining room table, which had become our makeshift command center. She knew this day would come, even if she hoped it wouldn't. He picked up a leather pouch, spilling its contents carefully. Crystals of various colors caught the light, each humming with a subtle energy I could now feel. "These are focus stones. They help channel and control the gift. Emma, the rose quartz will work best for you. Sarah, the obsidian." As I picked up the black stone, it felt warm in my palm, almost alive. Images flashed through my mind, women I'd never met but somehow recognized, all holding similar stones, all facing similar threats. Emma held her pink crystal gingerly, as if it might explode. "How do we use them?" she asked. Grandpa smiled sadly. "That's what the next 3 days are for. Crash course in abilities you should have been learning since childhood." He pulled out a stack of notebooks, all in Grandma's handwriting. "These are the training journals. Exercises, meditations, protection spells, though she never called them spells. She preferred energy work." Dad joined us, having finished with the windows. "I've called in sick to the store," he said. "Mike can handle things. And I've activated the security system your mother had installed, the one I never understood until now." "What security system?" I asked, but before Dad could answer, Emma gasped. She was holding her crystal, and her eyes had gone wide. "I can feel them," she whispered. "Everyone on our street. Mrs. Patterson is worried about her cat. The Johnsons are fighting again. The new family 3 houses down, something's wrong there. They feel empty." Grandpa moved quickly, placing his hand over Emma's, helping her lower the crystal. "Too much too fast," he said. "You need to learn to shield first, or you'll be overwhelmed by everyone's emotions." He turned to me. "Try yours, but carefully. Just hold it and open your mind a crack, nothing more." I gripped the obsidian, closing my eyes. At first, nothing happened. Then, like tuning into a distant radio station, images began to form. I saw our house, but overlaid with something else, lines of light running through the walls, creating patterns I almost recognized. The salt circles glowed in my vision, but there were other protections too, symbols carved into the foundation, woven into the very wood and stone. And beyond our property line, shadows waited, testing the barriers, looking for weaknesses. I opened my eyes, gasping. They're still out there. Multiple figures, watching us. Dad checked his shotgun reflexively. "How many?" I concentrated, trying to see without touching the stone this time. The ability flickered, unstable, but I caught glimpses. 5, maybe 6. They're not trying to get in, just observing. Grandpa nodded grimly. "Standard procedure. They'll watch, learn our routines, test our defenses. The 3-day deadline wasn't mercy, it's tactical. They're giving us just enough time to make mistakes." Emma set down her crystal, rubbing her temples. "I need coffee. And about 1,000 aspirin." As she headed to the kitchen, I noticed her movements were different, more careful, as if she was trying not to touch anything. "The empathy gift is hardest to control," Grandpa explained, seeing my concern. "She's picking up emotional imprints from objects now, not just people. Everything holds memory, especially in a house this old." He gestured to the journals. "Start with the basics. Page 1, Meditation Exercises. You need to learn to create mental walls before we can teach you anything else." I opened the first journal, finding detailed instructions in Grandma's precise handwriting. But as I read, something bothered me. "Grandpa, these techniques, they're not just Chinese. There's Sanskrit here, some Celtic symbols, what looks like Native American practices." "Your grandmother was a scholar of the gift in all its forms," he said proudly. "She traveled, learned, synthesized. The gift manifests differently in different cultures, but the core is the same, connection to something beyond the physical world." He pulled out a world map, marked with red dots. "Every culture has people like us. The order wants to control or eliminate us all, create their version of order in the chaos." I studied the map, noting concentrations in certain areas. "They're mostly in places of old power. Sacred sites, ancient cities, convergence points." "Yes," Grandpa agreed. "Which is why your grandmother chose this house. It sits on a minor convergence, enough to strengthen the gift but not enough to draw major attention. Or so we thought." Dad returned from checking the perimeter. Nothing's changed outside. They're just watching. He sat heavily, looking older than his years. I owe you both an explanation, he began, but I cut him off. Later, Dad. Right now, we need to focus on surviving the next 3 days. But he shook his head. No, this is important. You need to know why I kept this from you, why your mother and I made the choices we did. He pulled out his wallet, extracting an old photo I'd never seen. It showed Mom, young and radiant, standing with a group of women in what looked like a garden party. But looking closer, I realized each woman had the same intense gaze, the same awareness that I now recognized in my own reflection. Your mother was part of a network, Dad explained. Women with the gift who tried to use it for good, to help people. They called themselves the Garden Circle, innocuous enough to avoid suspicion. But the Order found them anyway. What happened to them? Emma asked, returning with coffee for everyone. Dad's face darkened. One by one, they died or disappeared. Accidents, illnesses, simply vanishing. Your mother realized the pattern too late. By then, she was already sick, and you two were showing signs of the gift. She made me promise to keep you away from all of it, to let you live normal lives. His voice broke. I failed her. Failed you both. Emma moved to hug him, but pulled back at the last second, the empathy obviously too strong. You didn't fail anyone, Dad. You kept us safe for 30 years. That's not failure. But at what cost? I asked, surprising myself with the bitterness in my voice. We could have been learning, preparing. Instead, we're cramming decades of training into 3 days because we were kept ignorant. Grandpa raised a hand before Dad could respond. Both choices had merit, he said diplomatically. But dwelling on the past won't help us now. Sarah, try exercise 1. Emma, I'll teach you the basic shielding technique. We work with what we have. I forced myself to focus on the journal, following the meditation instructions. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Visualize a wall of light around your mind. Simple in theory, harder in practice when you could feel malevolent presences circling your home like sharks. But gradually, something shifted. The wall began to form, translucent at first, then growing more solid. The constant pressure of outside emotions, which I only now realized had always been there, faded to a manageable buzz. When I opened my eyes, Emma was successfully holding her crystal without wincing, and even Dad looked less stressed. Good, Grandpa said. Now we move to lesson 2, offensive capabilities. He pulled out another set of items, a bowl of water, candles, more crystals, and what looked like a very old mirror. The gift isn't just about seeing or feeling. It's about manipulating energy, changing probability, influencing outcomes. You mean magic, Emma said flatly. Grandpa waggled his hand. Labels limit understanding. Call it what you will, magic, psychic abilities, quantum manipulation. The important thing is learning to use it before they attack again. He lit a candle, the flame dancing despite the still air. Sarah, you'll start with fire. It responds well to the sight gift. Emma, water suits empathy better. Focus on the element, feel its essence, then ask it to move. It sounded ridiculous, but after everything that had happened, ridiculous had lost its meaning. I stared at the candle flame, trying to feel its essence as Grandpa instructed. At first, nothing happened. Then I remembered the rage I'd felt when the Order woman threatened us, the way the lights had responded. I let a fraction of that anger surface, channeling it toward the flame. It leaped, growing to 3 times its size before I hastily pulled back. Control, Grandpa warned. Emotion fuels the gift, but without control, it consumes. Emma was having better luck with the water, creating small ripples without touching the bowl. Her face was serene, focused, and I realized she'd always been better at controlling her emotions than me. We practiced for hours, taking breaks only when the strain became too much. By afternoon, I could make the flame dance to my will, while Emma could pull water from the bowl in defiance of gravity. Dad kept watch, occasionally reporting on the watchers' movements. They never approached, just maintained their vigil. As the sun began to set, Grandpa called a halt. Enough for today. You've made remarkable progress, but pushing too hard too fast is dangerous. He pulled out a bottle of something that smelled medicinal. Drink this. It helps with the headaches. The liquid was bitter but effective, the pounding in my skull easing within minutes. Emma and I sat on the couch, exhausted but oddly exhilarated. We're really doing this, she said wonderingly. We're really witches or whatever. I laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. Seems like it. Think I can put this on my resume? Architect with minor in supernatural defense? But the humor felt forced. The reality was setting in, our lives had irrevocably changed. Even if we survived the next 2 days, we could never go back to ignorance. There's something else, Grandpa said, his tone making us both straighten. The order woman mentioned recruiting you. That's unusual. Typically, they eliminate threats, not recruit them. It suggests they know something about your potential that we don't. He pulled out another journal, this one bound in black leather. Your grandmother's final journal. I haven't read it, she made me promise to wait until you were both here. I think it's time. He handed it to me with shaking hands. Read it aloud. We all need to hear this. I opened to the first page, dated just a month before Grandma's death. Her handwriting was shakier here but still legible. My dear granddaughters, I read, my voice catching. If you are reading this, then the time I foresaw has come to pass. The order has found you, and you must make a choice that will echo through generations. But first, you must understand the true nature of your inheritance. I paused, looking at the others. Dad nodded encouragingly, Emma gripped my hand, and Grandpa sat forward intently. The gift you carry is not just sight or empathy, I continued reading. These are merely facets of something greater. Together, you possess what the ancients called the twin flame, a power that manifests only when two souls of the same bloodline work in perfect harmony. The Order fears this above all else, for it represents a force they cannot control or corrupt. Your mother discovered this truth too late to develop her connection with her sister, who died young. But you too have the chance she never did. Emma and I looked at each other, understanding dawning. That's why they want both of us, Emma breathed. Separately we're strong, but together. Together, you're a threat to everything they've built, Grandpa finished. The twin flame hasn't manifested in over a century. Legend says it can reshape reality itself, heal what's broken, or destroy what threatens the balance. The weight of this revelation settled over us like a shroud. Outside, one of the watchers moved closer to our property line, as if sensing the shift in energy. There's more, I said, returning to the journal. But beware, the twin flame burns both ways. Use it without proper preparation, and it will consume you both. That's why I've hidden the training materials separately, why I've waited so long to reveal this truth. You must be ready not just in power, but in heart and spirit. You must trust each other completely, love without reservation, forgive without hesitation. Only then can you hope to wield what you truly are. The entry ended there, but there were more pages, more secrets waiting. So we have 2 days to learn to control individual gifts we just discovered, then somehow merge them into some legendary power that might kill us, I summarized. While being hunted by an organization that's existed for centuries. Wonderful. But even as sarcasm colored my words, I felt something else, a rightness, a clicking into place of pieces that had been scattered my whole life. Emma squeezed my hand. We can do this, she said with quiet certainty. We have to. For Mom, for Grandma, for everyone the Order has hurt. Grandpa stood, suddenly looking more vital than he had in years. Then we stop wasting time. The real training begins now. Sarah, Emma, you'll need to synchronize your breathing, your heartbeats, your very thoughts. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's the only way. As we prepared for the next phase of training, I caught movement outside. One of the watchers had lifted something, a phone or radio. They were reporting in, probably updating the order on our progress. Let them watch, I thought fiercely. Let them see us getting stronger. Because when the 3 days were up, they wouldn't be facing 2 frightened women anymore. They'd be facing the twin flame and all the power our grandmother had promised. The turning point had come not with the Order's attack, but with understanding our true inheritance. We weren't just victims in this story, we were the weapons our family had been forging for generations. And in 2 days, we'd find out if we were strong enough to wield ourselves without burning the world down around us. The innocent question about evening walks had led us here, to this moment of revelation and choice. There was no going back now, only forward into flame. The second day dawned gray and oppressive, matching the weight that had settled over our household. I'd managed 3 hours of broken sleep, plagued by dreams that felt more like visions, scenes of women throughout history wielding power, fighting shadows, some winning, most falling. Emma looked equally exhausted when we met in the kitchen, dark circles under her eyes telling their own story. The dreams? I asked, and she nodded. Not just dreams, she said quietly, glancing at where Dad was making breakfast with determined normalcy. I think I was seeing through their eyes. Feeling their emotions. Our ancestors, maybe? The thought was both comforting and terrifying. We weren't alone in this, but look how many had failed before us. Grandpa entered looking remarkably refreshed, carrying an armload of supplies from the shed. Good. You're both experiencing the awakening. The dreams are genetic memory, passed down through the maternal line. Pay attention to them, they contain lessons. He set down his burden, more crystals, bundles of herbs, and several items I couldn't identify. Today, we work on synchronization. But first, breakfast. Power requires fuel. Dad served eggs and toast in silence, his jaw tight with suppressed emotion. I could feel his fear radiating outward, no empathy gift needed. Dad, I started, but he shook his head. Just eat, Sarah. Please. The brittleness in his voice stopped any protest. As we ate, Grandpa spread out a new map on the table. This one showed our town, but overlaid with symbols and lines I was beginning to recognize. The Watchers have established a perimeter here, here, and here, he said, marking positions. But they've made an error. They don't know about the old tunnel system. Emma and I exchanged surprised looks. Tunnel system, we asked in unison. Dad finally spoke. Prohibition. Era. The original owner was a bootlegger. Your grandmother discovered them when we bought the house, had them reinforced and warded. They connect to 3 exit points, the old Miller place, the storm drain by the park, and the cemetery. Lovely, I muttered. Our escape route goes through a graveyard. How gothic. But Grandpa wasn't discussing escape. Not escape, he corrected. Maneuvering room. The twin flame requires space to manifest properly, and they'll expect us to stay cornered here. He pulled out Grandma's black journal again. There's a ritual site in the cemetery, old power that predates the town. If we're forced to make a stand, that's where we'll have the advantage. The casual way he discussed potential battle locations chilled me. This was really happening. We were actually planning for magical combat. Emma pushed away her half-eaten breakfast. I can feel them getting anxious, she said suddenly. The Watchers. Something's changed. They're expecting reinforcements. Grandpa's expression hardened. Then we accelerate the timeline. Basic synchronization will have to do. He led us to the living room, where he'd cleared a space and drawn symbols on the floor in what looked like salt mixed with crushed herbs. Sit facing each other, hands joined. Sarah, give Emma your obsidian. Emma, give Sarah your rose quartz. You'll need to work with both energies. We arranged ourselves as instructed, and immediately I felt the difference. The rose quartz was warm where the obsidian had been cool, pulsing with a gentler rhythm. Close your eyes, Grandpa instructed. Breathe together. In, out, in, out. Feel for each other's heartbeat through your joined hands. At first, all I felt was awkward, sitting on the floor holding hands with my sister like we were playing some childhood game. But gradually, something shifted. I became aware of Emma's pulse, slightly faster than mine. Without conscious thought, my heart began to adjust, slowing to match hers. Good, Grandpa's voice came from far away. Now, open your inner sight together. Look for the connection between you. I let my consciousness drift, searching for whatever he meant. Colors swirled behind my eyelids, the deep purple-black of the obsidian mixing with the soft pink of rose quartz. Then I saw it, a thread of silver light connecting Emma and me, thin as spider's silk but strong as steel cable. As I focused on it, the thread began to glow brighter. I see it, Emma whispered, and her voice came from inside my head as much as outside. The sensation was disorienting, like looking in a mirror and seeing someone else's face. Now strengthen it, Grandpa urged. Feed it your energy, your trust, your love. Hold nothing back. That was harder than it sounded. Opening myself completely to another person, even my sister, went against every protective instinct I'd developed. But I thought of Mom, of Grandma, of all the women who'd carried this gift alone. We had each other. That had to count for something. I let my walls down, feeling Emma do the same. The thread between us blazed to life, becoming a rope, then a bridge. Suddenly I wasn't just Sarah anymore, I was Sarah Emma, Emma Sarah, two consciousnesses touching at the edges. The sensation was overwhelming. I felt Emma's memories mixing with mine, her first day teaching, the loneliness of watching me leave for Chicago, the quiet strength she'd developed caring for our family. She saw my memories too, the pressure to succeed, the fear of coming home, the guilt that ate at me every holiday I missed. But underneath it all was love, fierce and protective, stronger than any magic. The room around us began to tremble. Books fell from shelves, pictures rattled on walls. Control it! Grandpa shouted, but his voice sounded distant, unimportant. Emma and I were lost in the connection, power building between us like electricity before a lightning strike. Then pain lanced through my skull, breaking the connection. I gasped, opening eyes I didn't remember closing. Emma was clutching her head too, tears streaming down her face. Too much, she managed. It's too much. Grandpa knelt between us, pressing cool cloths to our foreheads. You went too deep too fast, he said, but there was awe in his voice. The twin flame is eager to manifest. Perhaps too eager. Dad stood in the doorway, shotgun in hand, face pale. Whatever you just did, it lit up the whole house. The watchers are moving. We struggled to our feet, the room spinning slightly. Through the window, we could see figures in black converging on our property. How many? I asked, trying to count through blurred vision. 8, Emma said with certainty. No, 9. One's hanging back, different from the others. Older, more powerful. Grandpa moved quickly, gathering specific items. They're testing our defenses. This isn't the main assault, the 3 days aren't up. But they want to see what we're capable of. He handed us each a small bag. Protection charms. Won't stop a determined attack, but they'll help. The first probe came as a whisper of wind that shouldn't exist, carrying voices speaking words of doubt and fear. You're not strong enough, the voices said. You'll fail like all the others. Give up now, and we'll make it painless. Emma grabbed my hand, and together we pushed back against the mental intrusion. It was easier this time, our connection stabilizing at a more manageable level. The voices faded, replaced by frustrated silence. First test passed, Grandpa said approvingly. But they're just getting started. The next attack was more direct. The protection symbols on our walls began to flicker and fade, like ink dissolving in water. "They're unweaving the wards," Grandpa said, working frantically to reinforce them. "Help me." But I had another idea. Instead of defending, why not counter? I reached for the obsidian, then thought better of it. This needed both energies. "Emma," I said, extending my hand. She understood immediately, taking it and joining her power to mine. Together, we reached out to the failing wards, but instead of trying to maintain them, we changed them. The symbols shifted, morphing from passive protection to active reflection. The attacking energy hit our modified wards and bounced back, amplified. We heard cries of pain from outside as the Order's agents reeled from their own assault returned threefold. "Clever," Grandpa breathed. "Your grandmother would be proud. But now they know you can innovate, not just defend." Sure enough, the attack stopped. The Watchers pulled back to their original positions, one cradling what looked like a burned hand. The powerful one Emma had sensed remained motionless, observing. "Who is that?" I asked, straining to see details through the window. Grandpa's face went grave. "If I'm right, that's Marcus Void, current leader of the Order. The fact that he's here personally, it's both good and bad. Good because it means they're taking you seriously. Bad because he's reportedly killed dozens of gifted individuals personally." The name sent chills down my spine. Marcus Void, even the name sounded like an ending, a negation of existence. "What do we know about him?" Emma asked, ever the researcher. "Precious little," Grandpa admitted. "He appeared about 20 years ago, quickly rose through the Order's ranks. Some say he has gifts of his own, stolen from those he's killed. Others claim he's found a way to artificially replicate our abilities. What's certain is that he's ruthless, intelligent, and completely devoted to the Order's vision of controlling all supernatural power." Dad checked his phone, frowning. 3 missed calls from the sheriff's office. Bet they're getting reports of disturbances from the neighbors. It was a reminder that we existed in the regular world too, where magical battles would be explained away as gas leaks or power surges. "Let them come," I said with more confidence than I felt. "We'll tell them we're having electrical problems." Not exactly a lie. But Grandpa shook his head. "The Order has people everywhere, including law enforcement. Any official attention could give them an opening." He moved to the kitchen, returning with more of the bitter medicinal drink. "Rest for an hour. Then we try again. You need to achieve stable synchronization before tomorrow." Emma and I collapsed on the couch, exhausted despite it being barely noon. "This is insane," she said quietly. "Yesterday I was grading spelling tests. Now I'm fighting off magical attacks." "I know," I agreed. Part of me keeps expecting to wake up in my Chicago apartment, late for a client meeting. But we both knew this was no dream. The ache in our heads, the residual tingle of power in our hands, the very real threat circling our home, all undeniably real. "Do you think we can do it?" Emma asked. "Master this twin flame thing in time?" I considered lying, offering false comfort. But she deserved honesty. "I don't know. But I know we have to try. For everyone they've hurt, everyone they will hurt if we fail." She nodded, jaw setting with determination I remembered from when she decided to stay home for college to help with Mom. My little sister had always been stronger than me in ways that mattered. An hour passed too quickly. Grandpa had us try different exercises, moving objects in unison, reading each other's thoughts, even attempting to share vision. Each success came with splitting headaches and nosebleeds, our bodies struggling to adapt to the power flowing through us. But we were getting stronger, more coordinated. By evening, we could maintain the connection for minutes at a time without pain. "Progress," Grandpa said, but his praise was tempered with worry. "But Marcus hasn't moved. He's waiting for something. Reinforcements, Emma said suddenly, her empathic awareness spiking. Lots of them. They're excited? Anticipating victory. We moved to the windows, and my heart sank. 3 black vans had arrived, disgorging figures in tactical gear. This wasn't just the Order's mystical branch anymore, they'd brought soldiers. So much for the 3-day deadline, Dad said bitterly. Should have known they'd lie. But Grandpa was studying the scene with narrowed eyes. No, he said slowly. This isn't an attack. It's a siege. They're making sure we can't leave, can't get help. They still plan to wait until tomorrow. Why? I demanded. Why give us more time to prepare? Because Marcus is curious, a new voice said, making us all jump. The woman from the first night stood in our living room, having somehow bypassed all our defenses. Dad's shotgun swung toward her, but she made a dismissive gesture and the gun flew from his hands. Relax. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. I'm here to talk. Grandpa stepped forward, power gathering around him like storm clouds. Talk then. But make it quick. The woman smiled, cold and sharp. My name is Diana Void. Marcus is my brother. He sent me to make one last offer. She focused on Emma and me. Join us willingly. Learn to use your gifts properly, safely. Help us bring order to the chaos of the supernatural world. In return, your family lives. Refuse, and well, look outside. Do you really think you can fight all of them? I felt Emma's hand slip into mine again, our connection flaring. Together, we were stronger. Together, we might have a chance. But apart? What guarantee do we have? I asked. How do we know you won't just kill us once you have what you want? Diana pulled out a contract written in multiple languages, some I recognized, others completely alien. A binding agreement. Magical contracts are unbreakable, even for us. Your safety, your family's safety, in exchange for your cooperation. She set it on the coffee table. You have until dawn to decide. After that. She shrugged eloquently. Then she was gone, vanishing between one blink and the next. We stared at the contract, its pages seeming to writhe with their own life. It's a trap, Dad said immediately. Has to be. Obviously, Grandpa agreed. But what kind? These contracts are binding both ways. They can't directly harm you if you sign, but... He trailed off, studying the text. But there are worse things than death, Emma finished. They could control us, use us to hurt others, make us prisoners in all but name. I picked up the contract, feeling it pulse with power. The terms seemed straightforward, our service for our safety. But the subclauses were dense, full of legal and magical jargon I couldn't parse. We need more time, I said. Time to understand what we're really capable of, what signing or refusing really means. Then we use tonight wisely, Grandpa decided. No more basic exercises. We attempt full synchronization, consequences be damned. If you're going to make this choice, you should know the full extent of what you're choosing. Emma and I looked at each other, understanding passing between us without words. Tomorrow, everything would change. Whether we signed the contract or fought, our lives as we'd known them were over. But tonight, we had each other, we had our family, and we had power we were only beginning to understand. Then let's do it, Emma said, squeezing my hand. Let's become what Grandma always knew we could be. As we prepared for what might be our last training session, I caught sight of Marcus Void through the window. He stood motionless as a statue, watching our house with inhuman patience. Whatever tomorrow brought, I had the feeling he'd been waiting for it for a very long time. The conflict wasn't just deepening, it was rushing toward a conclusion none of us could fully foresee. But one thing was certain, the Chin sisters would meet it as we were meant to, together, flame to flame, until the very end. The training session that night pushed us beyond our limits. Grandpa had us attempt full synchronization again and again, each time lasting a few seconds longer before the pain forced us apart. By midnight, blood trickled from our noses and our hands shook uncontrollably, but we were close, so close to something transformative. One more time, Emma gasped, her face pale but determined. I can feel it, Sarah. We're almost there. I wanted to refuse, to insist we rest, but the contract on the coffee table seemed to pulse with malevolent life. We didn't have the luxury of careful preparation anymore. All right, I agreed, taking her hands again. But if it gets too intense, we pull back. Promise me. She nodded, and we began the now familiar process of synchronizing our breathing, our heartbeats, our very souls. This time, something was different. The silver thread between us didn't just brighten, it exploded into a river of light. I felt myself falling into Emma and her into me, our consciousnesses merging in a way that defied description. For a moment, we weren't two people but one entity with two bodies, seeing through four eyes, thinking with one mind. The power that flowed through us was intoxicating, terrifying, and absolutely correct. Then the visions started. We saw Grandma as a young woman, facing down order agents in this very room. We saw Mom, pregnant with Emma, weeping as she realized her daughters would inherit this burden. We saw ourselves as children, unconsciously using our gifts in small ways, me always knowing when someone was lying, Emma soothing upset playmates with a touch. But the visions went deeper, further back. Women in ancient China, medieval Europe, colonial America, all carrying the flame, all fighting the same shadow. And behind it all, a darkness that wasn't quite human, feeding on fear and stolen power. The order isn't what it seems, we said in unison, our voices harmonizing strangely. It's not just an organization. It's the connection shattered. We flew apart physically, sliding across the floor as if repelled by magnetic force. I hit the wall hard, stars exploding across my vision. Emma crumpled near the fireplace, consciousness flickering. No! Grandpa rushed between us, but Dad caught him. Don't touch them. Look! Light still crackled between Emma and me, unstable arcs of energy that scorched the floor where they touched. We'd gone too deep, pulled too much power, and now it was tearing us apart. Sarah! Emma's voice was thin, frightened. I can't control it. It's too much. I tried to reach for her, but the energy rebelled, sending another jolt of agony through my system. This was what Grandma had warned about, the twin flame burning its vessels. We were going to die here, in our childhood home, just another failed attempt in a long line of failures. No, I gritted out, forcing myself to think past the pain. We're stronger than this. Emma, remember the meditation. Walls. Build walls. She nodded frantically, and I felt her struggling to contain the power raging through her. I did the same, visualizing barriers of stone and steel around the burning core of energy inside me. Slowly, agonizingly, we brought it under control. The wild arcs of light faded, leaving only the smell of ozone and charred wood. We crawled toward each other, meeting in the middle of the room in an exhausted embrace. We saw it, Emma whispered. The truth about the order. They're not human, are they? Not entirely. Grandpa knelt beside us, his face grave. What did you see? We tried to explain, but the vision was already fading like a dream upon waking. Something ancient, I managed. Using the order as a front. Feeding on the gifted, growing stronger with each one they absorb. The devourers, Grandpa breathed, his face going ashen. Your grandmother theorized, but we hoped it wasn't true. He helped us to the couch, hands gentle but urgent. If the devourers have returned, if that's what truly leads the order, then this is bigger than just our family. They consume magical energy, growing more powerful with each feeding. In the old stories, they nearly destroyed all gifted bloodlines before being banished. Dad paced the room, shotgun forgotten. So we're not just fighting a human organization but some kind of supernatural parasites? It explains Marcus Void, Emma said weakly. The way he felt different, wrong. He's not fully human anymore. We sat in stunned silence, the weight of this revelation crushing. The contract on the table took on new meaning. It wasn't just servitude they wanted, but eventual consumption. They'd use us, drain us, and discard our husks. We can't sign, I said unnecessarily. But can we fight? After what just happened, we can barely maintain the connection without burning out. Grandpa stood, suddenly looking ancient. There is another way. Something your grandmother discovered but never had the chance to try. He went to the bookshelf, removing what looked like a solid piece of wood to reveal another hidden compartment. From it, he pulled a wrapped bundle. The severance blade, he said, unwrapping a knife that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It can cut magical connections, including the one between you. You'd keep your individual gifts but lose the twin flame. You'd be safer, but weaker. Emma and I recoiled simultaneously. After touching that unified consciousness, the thought of being separated was physically painful. No, we said together. There has to be another way. But even as we refused, doubt crept in. We'd nearly killed ourselves trying to control the full power. What if we couldn't master it in time? A soft knock at the door interrupted our discussion. We all froze, the orders people didn't knock. Dad approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. It's Mrs. Patterson from next door, he said, confused. At 2 a.m? But when he opened the door, the elderly woman's eyes were solid black. The dawn approaches, she said in a voice like grinding stone. Have you reached a decision? The devourer wearing our neighbor's face smiled at our shocked expressions. Oh yes, we have many vessels. The weak-minded make excellent puppets. This one has been watching you for years, reporting your movements. Such a helpful neighbor. Emma's power flared, trying to push the entity out of Mrs. Patterson, but it laughed. Empathy is useless against us, child. We feel nothing but hunger. It turned those terrible black eyes on me. But you, little seer, you glimpse the truth. Yes, we are ancient, we are hungry, and we are so very patient. Your bloodline has evaded us for centuries, but no more. Dad raised his shotgun, but I caught his arm. That's still Mrs. Patterson's body, I reminded him. The devourer's smile widened. Such noble hearts. That weakness will make consuming you all the sweeter. Get out, Grandpa commanded, holding up the severance blade. The entity actually stepped back, showing the first sign of wariness. Ah, the old man found grandmother's last resort. But will you use it? Cut the connection between your granddaughters, save their lives but doom any chance of defeating us? It tilted Mrs. Patterson's head unnaturally. Or will you let them try to master the twin flame, knowing it will likely kill them before they can threaten us? With that parting shot, the blackness faded from Mrs. Patterson's eyes. She blinked confused, then collapsed. Dad caught her, checking for a pulse. She's alive, just unconscious. We carried her to the couch, covering her with a blanket. How many others? Emma asked quietly. How many people in town are potential puppets? The paranoia was instant and overwhelming. Anyone could be compromised. We couldn't trust anyone outside this room. This changes our strategy, Grandpa said. We can't stay here, can't fight where innocence could be used against us. He looked at the knife in his hand, then at us. The cemetery. The old power there might give us an edge, and it's consecrated ground. Harder for devourers to manifest. They'll be expecting that, I pointed out. It's an obvious move. Then we make it less obvious, Emma suggested. We split up. Make them divide their forces. The thought of separating made my chest tight with panic, but she was right. No, Dad said firmly. Absolutely not. We stick together. But Grandpa was considering it. If you two took the tunnels to the Miller place while your father and I created a distraction here. No, still too risky. We debated plans as the clock ticked toward dawn, each option seeming worse than the last. Stay and fight on ground they'd surrounded. Run and fight on ground they'd predicted. Split up and risk being taken separately. No good choices. There is one thing, I said slowly, an idea forming. The contract. What if we pretended to agree? Got close enough to Marcus to attempt the twin flame at full power? Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Sarah, we can barely control it without killing ourselves, Emma protested. And if we're wrong, if we can't break the contract's binding. I know, I admitted. But what if that's the point? What if the only way to truly master the twin flame is to use it when it matters most? Grandma's journal said we had to trust completely. Maybe that means trusting the power not to destroy us when we need it most. It was a desperate plan, built on hope and guesswork. But as another knock came at the door, this one the precise rap of Diana Void, we were out of time and options. Choose, she called through the door. Sign and serve, or refuse and face the consequences. The dawn is here. Emma and I looked at each other, years of shared history passing in that glance. We'd always protected each other, always stood together even when physically apart. This would be no different. We need a minute, I called back. You have 5, Diana replied. Grandpa handed us the knife. Just in case, he said, tears in his eyes. If the power turns on you, if you start to burn, use it. Better to live separated than die together. We took it reluctantly, the blade cold and final in my hand. Dad, Emma said, whatever happens, know that we love you. That we're proud to be your daughters. He pulled us both into a fierce hug. I love you both so much. Your mother would be so proud of the women you've become. The emotion nearly broke our resolve, but we couldn't afford weakness now. Time's up, Diana called. We moved to the door as a unit, Dad and Grandpa flanking us protectively. Outside, the lawn was filled with order agents, and behind them, the ordinary people of our neighborhood stood with empty, black eyes. Marcus Void himself waited by the gate, his presence like a hole in reality. Your answer? Diana asked, contract in hand. Emma and I exchanged one last look. Together, we'd decided. Together, we'd face whatever came. We need to see the full terms, I said, reaching for the contract. Both of us. We signed together or not at all. Diana's smile was triumphant as she handed over the papers. She thought we were surrendering. Marcus remained motionless, but I felt his attention like ice on my skin. As we pretended to read, our hands touched, and the connection flared to life. Not the overwhelming torrent of before, but a steady, controlled flow. We were learning, adapting, becoming. Well? Diana prompted. It's time to choose. We looked up at her, then at the assembled forces of the Order, at our possessed neighbors, at the thing wearing Marcus Void's shape. So many enemies. So much power arrayed against us. But we had something they didn't expect, each other, and the flame that burned between us. We've chosen, we said in unison, our voices carrying power that made Diana step back. The crisis was here, the moment of truth. Everything we'd learned, everything we'd suffered, had led to this. In the growing light of dawn, 2 sisters stood against an ancient evil, armed with nothing but love, determination, and a power we were only beginning to understand. The emotional fallout of our choice would echo through generations, but first, we had to survive the next few moments. The twin flame stirred within us, ready to burn. The only question was, would it burn our enemies, or us?